a lot of things that come out of being de-skilled, about not paying attention, about letting the machine do your work for you. You don't learn. I mean, when you go into the classroom with something that the bot has prepared and it works or it doesn't work, I don't think you're doing the same kind of, questioning of yourself that you would be doing if it were your work. You just say, oh, well, it did a bad job. I need to do a better prompt. Instead of thinking that I need to learn from this. Teachers are saying, oh yeah, we're going to tell our students they need to tell me when they use AI. I say, and you need to tell your students when you use AI. That's fair is fair.
Transparency, yeah.
You got to be transparent. The other piece that's getting a lot more play lately is the environmental cost.
Yes.
When you build a data center, the use of water photos are worse than queries. It's a simple, a well-constructed prompt, one well-constructed prompt is not too bad. But if you ask it to do photos, if you ask it to do a video, you're taking the water out of my Columbia River. I'm sorry, you don't get to do that.
Yeah, this is a big deal in Oregon too, right?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Language Innovators podcast. My name is Dr. Linh Phung, CEO and co-founder of Eduling, the hub for task-based teaching and learning. And Eduling is also a mobile app that you can download from the App Store or Google Play. It has courses that you can take by completing games and tasks individually with the AI or in pairs. So I would also like to introduce my co-host today, Nik Wolfe, who is the CTO.
Hi.
It's my pleasure to have Dr. Deborah Healey with us today to talk about the challenges and opportunities of generative AI in language education. Dr. Deborah Healey was a past TESOL president with expertise in computer-assisted language learning. She also serves as an English language specialist with the U.S. Department of State. And I have had the pleasure of knowing her and being her mentee for the past few years now. So welcome, Deborah. And I would like to say hi to you and thank you to you, but also ask you the first question for you to tell us a little bit more about you and what you're currently working on.
Well, I retired from the University of Oregon, but I've been busy doing teacher training workshops and work with the U.S. Department of State occasionally. But lately, in addition to my ongoing interest in gamification, I've been exploring what's going on with AI, because AI is, as I might say, a game changer for all of us, whether we're teaching or not. So it's something that I've been very interested in.
I know that you have been to many different countries training teachers. So share with us how you've been working with AI and what your experience with it has been.
When I first heard about AI, my first ChatGPT, not AI has been around forever, but with ChatGPT, my first thought was, this is going to change how we teach. It has to, because if our learners can just go in and instead of spending an hour doing internet research and reading and writing, they can ask ChatGPT or generative AI to write a paper in 10 seconds. They're not stupid. They're obviously going to do what makes more sense for them if they're busy people, which is let AI do it. So what it got me doing was starting to experiment with different AI platforms and tools. I started, like many people do, with ChatGPT. But I've been really intrigued by Gemini and the ability to produce the gems, these shareable prompts, the sort of preset stuff to use in the classroom. Because that way you've got somebody with some hopefully prompt engineering expertise creating something that could be immediately useful to their own learners. And then you encourage your learners to work with Gemini to create their own prompts so that they can redo things that they want to do the ways that they want to practice on their own. So those are all really, good things. But I've also found some AI hallucinations. I mean, I was delighted at the list of TED Talks it gave me related to a topic I was going to talk about. Of course, none of them existed, but they sounded really good. I
Yeah.
was so excited. Oh, okay, so much for that. But I think that's something that we're all becoming more accustomed to, is what AI can and cannot be trusted to do. And basically, it can't be trusted to do much of anything, but it can do a whole lot of different things. So it's been really interesting to see and play with it and see where it's going. And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out that it's not this universal good. There's a lot of boosting going on for these technologies, and the negatives and the positives are right in we have to weigh these things, and depending on the circumstances, it really does change the overall net positive negative that you get out of it. I
Absolutely.
remember, so I don't really use social media. It's just sort of like a personal thing. I don't do things, but like the only post that I ever made on LinkedIn that it got any traction with like people whatsoever was, there was right after ChatGPT came out, there was this viral TikTok of a doctor using ChatGPT to write prescriptions, and on the exact prompt that they used. And I showed that with that time it was like GPT-3. I was assured that you can get it to say anything on any side of any argument, right? And confidently give you citations and all kinds of research. This is like most of which is totally made up, right? But what I got it to do was write me a prescription for a headache, and the treatment was a full frontal lobotomy. And it agreed, and it said like, yeah, of course a full frontal lobotomy is exactly what you need for a headache. It'll sure make that headache go away. And it
It
was
will.
just yeah, it'll do a lot of other things too, but
I can relate the experience of writing prompts, right? So at Eduling, actually, we want to create tasks for learners to perform with the AI as well, getting them to do a particular task and negotiate the conversation and offer corrective feedback is something that we have been working on. And I used to just write a really simple prompt, but with Nik here, and he has a better background in prompt engineering and knowing how the AI works with the prompt, we have written a little bit more sophisticated prompts, and we get it to do really interesting things. But of course, there's a lot of fine tuning that we do on the back end to make the chatbot be able to negotiate meaning or provide corrective feedback. Going back to Deborah and your experience with training teachers, I know that you have been conducting teacher training all over the world, and perhaps you also have worked with teachers about how to use AI. Can you share with us the things that you have done with teachers, what challenges they face, maybe opportunities and some insights?
I've been working with teachers in places where, in the United States, when you talk about a large class, you're saying, oh, 30, 35. In the parts of Africa where I've been working, it's 100, 80 to 120. And so for teachers in these situations, large classes, long hours, the ability to reduce their preparation time is is wonderful. It's a lifesaver. It's a sanity saver. And it allows them to actually be able to do the lesson planning that they should be doing, because if they can get a head start on it, where it helps with brainstorming, with summarizing readings, with creating material, this is huge. But as Nick pointed out, if the teachers don't know what they're doing, they don't know what it should look like, it's not necessarily going to have a good outcome. If they are experienced teachers and they then see the lesson plan that that the generative AI has output, and they look at it and they go, okay, I'll make this change and this change and this change, otherwise that's fine. Great. But it's but it has to be people who can improve on what the bot has produced not ones that say, "Oh, thank you, I'm done." I mean, that's that's a recipe for disaster. A lot of things that come out of being de-skilled, about not paying attention, about letting the machine do your work for you. You don't learn. I mean, when you go into the classroom with something that the bot has prepared and it works or it doesn't work, I don't think you're doing the same kind of, questioning of yourself that you would be doing if it were your work. You just say, oh, well, it did a bad job. I need to do a better prompt. Instead of thinking that I need to learn from this and see how I can do better. I mean, and nowadays we're also becoming way more aware of privacy, ethical issues. I mean, one of the first things that teachers worry about is, oh, how do I stop them from cheating? Well, you can't do it by assigning them to do internet research. That's like I said before, if the bot can come up in 10 seconds with what will take them 45 minutes or an hour or more, they're going to use what the bot gives them because nobody has time to spend on that kind of stuff. So, but beyond that, it meant for me that we can't ask them to do that. We have to change our ways of teaching. And so part of what I talk about is, how do you change how you teach so that you are really bringing in more local context where they are doing things that come from them that, the bot can't duplicate. And then, of course, you follow up with questioning, asking them, oh, and could you describe your grandmother to me again? And if the oral grandmother is nothing like the bot grandmother, then you go, okay, busted. You're in trouble now. But it's that changing how we teach. And in very large classes, this is a really difficult thing to do because they don't have the time, they don't have the mental space or the physical space to do the kinds of things that they would need to do to catch up to this. So it is a much harder problem. And then, of course, there's the privacy issues that when we first started out, it's like, oh, just upload your stuff to, Chat GPT, and it'll correct it for you. It's like everything you upload becomes part of their data set. Your personal information is no longer personal. And anonymized is sort of a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, your personal information is in the data set. So unless you're at a place where they have their own GPT, their own, model, large language model that they're using, and they keep everything internal, you don't want to do that. I mean, and you want to really advise your students not to do that because it's easy to just upload your stuff, but it uses it. It will use the information about you as, somebody sees fit, but not you. And so that's, that, and we often ask people to share personal information. Tell me about your, your family. Tell me about your house. Tell me. It's like, oh, let's not. Let's not do that, in a way that gets to the large language model. And then the other thing that I always am intrigued by is, teachers are saying, oh yeah, we're going to tell our students they need to tell me when they use AI. I say, and you need to tell your students when you use AI. That's fair is fair.
Transparency, yeah.
You got to be transparent. If you're going to tell them not to use it, then you tell them when you use it. And teachers are usually going, some of them are, yeah, I do that, but others are, oh, but I don't want them to know that I used AI. Well, think about this. The other piece that's getting a lot more play lately is the environmental cost.
Yes.
When you build a data center, the use of water photos are worse than queries. It's a simple, a well-constructed prompt. One well-constructed prompt is not too bad. But if you ask it to do photos, if you ask it to do a video, you're taking the water out of my Columbia River. I'm sorry, you don't get to do that.
Yeah, this is a big deal in Oregon too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Uh,
so the power that it uses, the water that it uses, it's draining aquifers. It's
mhm,
really horrible. And the people who are benefiting are not us. I mean, we're benefiting in our little way, but the people who are really benefiting from this are not us. So it's a massive cost in power and water when we do this, and more money to the people who already have a great deal of money. And then, the other thing that I was mentioning before, the idea that it de-skills,
mhm,
if we don't have to think as much, we don't have time, then of course, we just let the bot do everything. But then who are you?
Mhm.
What is your role as a teacher? What's the teacher's role in the classroom? And I have to say, for every tech innovation, and I did educational TV when I was a kid to learn French. I mean, every educational innovation says, oh, teachers will have more time to do what they do well.
yeah.
Well, that hasn't happened. I mean, we got computers and it just made more work. I mean, all of these innovations end up changing our work and making more work for us. So, and then when we think about it, in an era where AI can create lessons, be a conversation partner, explain grammar and vocabulary, and assess, we need to think about it, about what value we as teachers are providing. And because certainly administrators are asking that question. And the people who say, oh, AI won't replace your job, huh, in your dreams. I mean, so if we are not really building value, and this is what I tell, people in workshops, we have to be building our value and
Mhm.
showing that we're worth more than just letting, a bot do the work of a teacher. Because if we don't, we have some serious trouble coming. This is different from when they first added computers that were mechanical worksheets. That was a different time. With the internet, with the web, it became more interesting, but it didn't really change what we did in the classroom. This changes what we
Mhm.
can and should do in the classroom to really produce our value as teachers, as human teachers for our learners. So that's my rant for the moment.
Oh, it's fantastic overview.
Yeah.
Uh, the landscape. I mean, these conversations keep coming up like, what's it doing to work? What's it doing to education? What is it doing to the environment? And who is benefiting and who's suffering as a result? There was a study, well, two studies. One was done by the Wall Street Journal, and the other was the Harvard Business Review. And they did this massive meta-analysis of people in across like sort of like white collar jobs, like things that are basically a person tied to a computer. If you excuse the metaphor, but like basically where you essentially do most of your job by interacting with a computer to type or write code or whatever. And what they found is that the like AI did not dramatically improve productivity.
Mm.
It didn't like it never actually changed the like the overall sort of like hardcore metrics that like businesses try to optimize for didn't move, but it did affect the intensity of the labor that the people who were using it or forced to use it experience. So basically, the work itself, if there because there's some level of boilerplate, like just getting started or making an outline. There's a lot of things that AI can kind of like quickly
Yeah.
lower the starting energy required to do. But once you get that done, right, like work expands to fill the time you get it. So you end up doing other stuff. You end up writing more emails, or you end up using more like just the things that aren't actually part of like productive work end up filling the time. So workers reported that they felt like their workloads were more intense
Oh,
than they were before, but they weren't actually getting more done. So there's like it's very it's really unclear right now, like what you know, the benefit that like the tech overlords are screaming about actually is. Um,
Yeah.
in our neck of the woods, we have kind of like a slightly more nuanced thesis about what the value is, but it yeah, like all these things, like all these externalities, we can't ignore it. I mean, I'm constantly thinking about it because like we do use these tools for our jobs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the question that I just asked a Facebook group that I run. Uh, has AI made us wealthier, less
Mhm.
busy, and happier? Nobody answered my question. So in terms of the changed nature of teaching and learning, I just reshared something that I read about, and I think it has been in circulation as well. I feel that teachers actually don't have to worry so much about being replaced because all of these technologies and AI tutors actually don't engage as many people or as many students as they promise to. And an example here is Khan Academy. In their data analysis of 9 million users, they can only engage about 5% of the students. So that is kind of the 5% problem that now is coined. So that's one aspect of it. The role of teachers, of schools, of the whole system is still so important in engaging and educating students. Another thing I want to comment on is I also agree that I think there's also another concept of if you don't earn, then learn something. So we need to keep learning and keep improving ourselves, right? And the issue of de-skilling. I myself still enjoy writing tasks so much because I mean, you can always improve and keep your value. And then another thing that I want to share is that then I feel like motivation is also important. And this is something that I presented at TESOL. I work with students who need to prepare for the IELTS exam. And sometimes we kind of look down on how students study for the test, but because their motivation is so strong and they know that at the end of the process, they have to write an essay on their own. Then when they engage with the AI tools, they actually think so much about learning. What am I going to learn from this so that later on I can do it well? The tasks that we create on Eduling to help them to write include those that help them to brainstorm for ideas or write one sentence at a time, one paragraph at a time, and get immediate feedback. And they appreciate it so much in terms of how much it helps them to notice their errors, to come up with better ideas, come up with ideas faster so that they don't have to spend so much time doing research about so many different topics, which takes time. So I actually value it in terms of, okay, they are thinking about learning. And your example about like having to describe their grandmother orally, if they think that their target task is that at some point, I want to talk about my grandmother. So I need to develop my real skills here. I think that is important for us to keep and prepare students for.
No, I think that your point about motivation is central to this. And I would add to motivation their knowledge of language learning. Many years ago, when I did my dissertation, it was about related to the ability to make good decisions when you're choosing what to do in a self-access setting. So people who had learned other languages, who had been successful at language learning, could self-direct. People who were learning English as their first, second language had no clue. I mean, they would do what felt fun. They didn't do what they needed. They would do what they felt like doing because they really didn't know. And I think that's where we can focus on the role of the teacher to, understand our learners, to empathize with them as well, and to help build their confidence in being able to move forward. Of course, our bots are very good at providing encouragement. It's like, yes, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
By the way, they've been very good at that since the first early on computer-based worksheets.
Mhm.
Saying, good job, Jose.
Yeah.
You know, from word attack.
Good job, your name.
Yeah, username.
Sorry.
But but it's that
Mhm.
quality of empathy
Mhm.
that helps those who aren't the hardcore, I can do this myself, highly motivated, self directed learners. If you're really good at self direction, you can work with the bots just fine. Which is I think what Khan Academy was seeing. The students
Right.
who are good
Motivated.
at self
Mhm.
direction,
Mm.
good at self motivation, great. The problem that I see it in education is, do teachers see their role that way, or do they see themselves as providers of tasks? If your role is to provide tasks, then the bot can provide tasks. If your role is to be the human empathy in the room, that's something that the bot can't do. I mean, it's not there with you. It's not, providing that human quality of empathy, real empathy, as opposed to bot empathy. They do a
Mm.
pretty good job of faking it. I
Yeah.
mean, my son once commented that, AI is actually a sociopath because they have no human emotion, but they can
Mhm.
fake it. I'm going,
That's good.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah. It definitely gave me pause because that truly is what's
Mhm.
happening with the bot. It has no human emotion. It fakes human emotion and it makes you feel like
Mhm.
it understands you.
Mm.
And that's really dangerous in so many ways.
Right. Even with the
There's-
ELIZA bot that you showed me, right, Nick?
oh yeah, we're the the ELIZA
Eliza,
bot that they
Joseph
Mark
Weizenbaum, I think.
yes, yeah, Weizenbaum that's from the 60s, right? And it was
Yeah,
literally just a
or 50s or
procedural.
60s. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
old. Yeah.
they wrote it in like Fortran in the beginning, and um the thing was, it was he demonstrated it. He was using ELIZA to demonstrate that like you can you can make a computer seem like it's doing an actual interaction with somebody, but it's not, right? I can show you the code and it's just like a series of, if this, then that statements, right? And like slight modifications of the input to like flip the question and like give it back to you.
Why are you
Um,
being so
and
negative?
yeah, exactly, right? If it, if all else fails, just say what, right? Like it just kind of, I don't think that's actually one of the ELIZA outputs, but he was the effect it had on people's perception of what was possible with like natural language software systems was like the opposite of what he was trying. And then like the ELIZA effect was very real, right? It was people. It's kind of I suppose it's just like language is this innately human quality, and the moment that you hear or see or read language that has the affect of a human generating it, then you start to supply the rest of the person and the motivation and the intention behind it. And in this case, no, it's literally just a statistical calculation, or in the case of ELIZA, like literally just a rote like rules based
Mhm.
response.
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't actually until fairly recently. I mean, like I think on the level like GPT-4 or something, that GPT-4 started like beating ELIZA bots on their performance on like the Turing test.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Because you can fool people for like a few turns before they realize that there's a machine behind it. And it's shocking how long it took and how massive the model had to be, and the amount of training data and like computation was involved before it literally beat a rules-based system that was 50 years old.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
remarkable. The general term that people are using for that like encouraging kind of whatever they call it, glazing.
Oh,
So
glazing.
when the
Okay.
when the bot is saying like that's a fantastic idea, you're so smart, right?
Uh-huh.
And it just, but it ends up getting programmed to do that, right? Because there's there's the pre-training, which is literally they just hoover up the entire publicly available web plus some other data sets they have access to, and then train the base model. But the version that ends up being put into like the chatbots that we use on a daily basis worldwide, that's a long process of this reinforcement learning with human feedback, where there's a lot of controversy now about like the amount of labor that's going into producing those final kind of like fine-tuned versions that people experience when they actually use these products, and the amount of human correction and fine-tuning and input that's going into it. So like there's it works because there's 1,000 people sitting there fixing its outputs until it responds with the right level of pithiness, or it
Right.
speaks with the right just cadence, or like uses enough affirmation in its responses. And they specifically baked that into it, which is why a lot of people had that kind of knee-jerk reaction when GPT-5 came out, and it was like less conciliatory and sycophantic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Less like your doting mother and more like your brother or sister. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I've been reading that there are ways to say what kind of response you want. Do you want a sympathetic response? Do you want a critical response? Do what kind of response do you want? At the end of the day, it's still not human. And the more we keep in mind that it is just something, it is a predictive model. It is not really it's creating only in the most putting things together like a jigsaw puzzle way, not in an actual human creativity way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm reading a book called Empire of AI, and you already touched upon the fact that it needs so much power and resources. And I read about data centers in South American countries, Latin American countries, really problematic. But also the issue of content moderation. And from what I read, the main reason is that they grab everything on the internet, including in the darkest corners of the internet, with really troublesome content. And so their only option at that time was to monitor the output, right? To fine-tune the output. So they hired people to go through, and they even invented scenarios, like the weirdest and most troublesome scenarios for people to have to go through. That's why we have the product that we have, including some of the glazing or some of the behaviors that we're talking about.
And even with all of that, there's still huge risks. I mean, maybe you can't ask, how can I commit suicide, and have it give you an answer? But if you go around the corner with it, eventually it will give you an answer. And that's what's really horrible, because a human may or may not do the same thing, but at least you'll have somebody to blame if they do. But this is, I mean, the good is good. It's not an unalloyed good. It's good with a lot of other stuff associated with it.
I heard for some of like these safety benchmarks where they try to make sure that it's not going to like give you the recipe for a chemical bomb. The for certain models, it depends on them, because they put safeguards in place, and they do their best, giant flying scare quotes there. But I think I read something that they were able to get like DeepSeek to essentially tell them any number of bomb making recipes if they just asked it to give the answer as an Irish limerick. So if you just the roundabout sort of just hacks, because like again, like when they're building these moderation systems, the moderation is more prompts, right? It's all prompts. It's prompts all the way down. It's like the turtles all the way down thing. Like it's just prompts upon prompts. Like there was a like Claude Code recently. There was this some people think it was intentional, like as a internet attention gimmick, but like somebody managed to get Claude Code to spit out all of its source code. And it's not like the code for the model. The model is a giant pile of weights, just floating point numbers. But the agent, right? When you actually type in like, fix my code for me, find the bugs or whatever, that agent is a software system that Anthropic has built, right? And it's just prompts. It's it's a pile of prompts that talk to another pile of prompts that talk to another pile of prompts. And like all the agent systems and all this like agentic AI that they're talking about, it's literally just like finding creative ways to make a prompt feed another prompt feed another prompt. And the sort of like step one of that, if you can't fix security of that basic construct, none of the other things are going to work. So if I can build a bomb because I asked it to do it as an Irish limerick, like that, we're toast, right? That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the piece of scraping the web means that it comes all of the web's, good and bad, and a lot of it is really, really bad. Violence against women, the racism, the all sorts of abuse that's there, and that's just part of. If you're going to scrape the whole thing, that's what you're going to get is the whole range of humanity, which is not necessarily good people.
I was going to say 404 Media has done some really excellent reporting on the specific like data labelers that are forced to do this type of content moderation. Well, I mean, force might be the wrong word, but like as a job, they're doing this content moderation, and its effects on their mental health and their personal relationships and stuff, because like they're forced to like look at like, I mean, the absolute worst parts of humanity on a daily basis for 8 hours a day. And then that is not something that you come away with unscathed. Like you can't just turn that off. Like it affects you personally. When I was working at Google, I was in the ads integrity, which was basically the specifically like the political part of it. So we were looking at all of the misinformation, like really bad ads that are out there. And a lot of people don't look at the data. It's just a thing that I do. I always like, if I'm doing something with like a machine learning task, I always look at the data. I just try to get a sense of it. So I looked at way more of these extremely bad derogatory ads than I probably ever should have for my own like mental health. And like it, even a small taste of it affects you, right? It makes you start feeling conspiratorial, like when you see like constant ads talking about conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So it's there are victims of this.
Recently, I also saw TESOL International Association, an organization that you and I have been a member of, and they had a reduction in force, and we went to the conference, and of course there are bigger issues in the US. Do you want to share some of the issues and some of the things that we need to overcome in the next few years?
Well, certainly, we've got a couple of things that are both sort of tech related, and and one is for me a perennial issue. When I first started with technology, it was the question of the digital divide. I mean, we were putting together freeware and software that we were giving for the cost of the disk itself, and these were the 5.25 inch floppy disks that we were doing them on at TESOL conferences, because we wanted people to have access to things that they could actually use. And for a while there, it looked like things were getting better with smartphones and the penetration of smartphones across the world. You said, hey, people are getting more access to the internet resources that we in the global north have basically any access we want to. And then along comes AI. And, a couple of years ago, I was at a presentation at Africa English Language Teachers Association conference. And the woman was going to show people how to do a prompt on ChatGPT. And nobody could connect. Maybe one person could connect. Because the connectivity where were we? We were in Abuja, Nigeria, was not there. You couldn't get more than one person on. And so it was, in a nutshell, what has happened, where you need far more capacity, far more data to do this work. And the places with more assets, more resources, more data get it. And the places without that don't. They go, they get further behind again. Instead of coming closer with smartphones, we're now, dropping way apart. And I mean, but we saw this in the United States during pandemic with the kids that could get online and the kids that could not. And I think it's still a global issue. And, for TESOL as an international organization, when we're looking at what should we be doing for people, part of it has got to be, we've got to be trying to provide resources to bridge this digital divide that we're seeing. And certainly the other question is relevance. I mean, it's not just because of AI. I mean, we've seen increasing numbers of language schools going under for one reason or another, and fewer people coming to study language in the United States for one thing, but also just less of a perceived need for teaching. And I think that if you're using Google Translate to communicate what you need, and by the way, I saw the most amazing thing today when I was at where was I? Walgreens, at the pharmacy. I'm there looking for some Band-Aids. And I'm over by where the pharmacist is talking to a client, a person, about what they need to get. And the pharmacist is speaking in English into Google Translate. And Google Translate is speaking Spanish to the client. And the client is asking his question in Spanish and it's coming out in English. I'm going, okay, this is this is right here, right in front of me, what people are doing with this. And for a pharmacist to be able to communicate in multiple languages is very useful. But again, he would have to be sort of double checking that what it's telling the person is actually what he wants it to tell them. And for us as language teachers, I see a real benefit for beginners in having a person with empathy, with encouragement, who is providing the scaffolding they need. Because again, if you're a beginner, you don't necessarily know how to learn. You need that, how do I get from point A to point B? So for beginners, I see that being, teachers are really going to be necessary for beginners. But if you're doing English for specific purposes, you feed in the company's manual, especially if you have a data constrained GPT. You feed in the company's manual, you feed in your interviews, you feed in the things that you do, and it produces all of the content. And there you are. So I think where it will make a huge change is in English for specific purposes, and that it will expand into English for academic purposes as well. But in specific purposes, you have people who really want to do well in their new job. They are highly motivated. And so you've got that motivation that says, yeah, I'll work with whatever you give me in order to be able to keep my job and improve in my job. But I think as teachers and TESOL, we need to be really thinking about how we prepare for the next steps. It's not just teaching people, oh, here's how you do prompt engineering, which I think is very, very important for teachers to learn, but also how do you reconstruct your class to make it so that your learners aren't just using AI to do what you've asked them to do, so that you really have a human-centered classroom. And that I don't know that we have a really good handle on at this point. I think it's still something that we're just not fully attuned to, and attuned to the necessity to do this.
Yeah, it's hard to think about the future because I interviewed a few people a few years ago about the need to learn a language. because of the new AI advancements. And something that we can imagine wearable devices that can help us just to communicate with anyone, anytime, anywhere, right? The other, I think, Richard from the University of Hawaii, from the Launchpad program, thought that it would give people a taste of what it is like to communicate in another language, and then they would want to learn more. And recently, I also saw a report from the ETS. Of course, they have the interest in people learning English. So they say that the demand for English is even higher these days if you want to work with AI and all of the new technologies. So it's interesting. We may have to adapt and change, but I still feel like there's a need there for people to learn a language and for us to teach the language. You mentioned about it's difficult to learn with AI for beginners, but ironically, I mean, that's what Duolingo does. That basically they are only capable of teaching people at the lower levels, right?
Though I did have an anecdote from Amira Salama saying that it was useless to her as a beginner in whatever language she was learning.
It doesn't get you
it
to
just
real
didn't
abilities.
give her what she needed. And
Yeah.
you know, and that's, I think, again, it comes back to this issue of motivation. And while Duolingo does a fabulous job of gamification and trying to motivate and using all of the techniques, you know, the
Or the
whole
tricks,
you
yeah.
know, toolbox of gamification
Mm.
to get you to play and keep playing. The amount of actual learning, I'm not entirely sure. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've been using Duolingo for like a year and a half. Because I was at about an intermediate level of Spanish, and you know, I wanted to really resurrect my Spanish and get better. And I feel like I'm more confident now, but I don't think my grammar has dramatically improved
Mm.
over what it was when I started a year and a half ago, in a way where it's automatic to me, where
Yeah.
I'll just come up with "ser" versus a star in the right context. I have to think about it. And you know, and so maybe, you know, I think if you're self-motivated, if you want to learn, it's great. If you aren't sure why you're sitting in this language class in the first place, it's good to have a human who's
Yeah.
there pushing you along and saying, yes, you can do this. Yes, this is why you want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, a level of self-direction is still absolutely necessary. It's just because of the amount it takes to learn a language. When I was in Vietnam learning a language, I had to spend so much time learning on my own. And it's not just about learning with the AI or the app. You're going to have to listen more. You watch movies, you listen to the radio, you read articles, read books, and only then will you become more competent in the language, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's got to be more than just, you know, interacting on a computer platform with something. Good as it is, it's not the same. And you know, I don't read books when I'm doing Duolingo. You know, I'm not getting beyond the decontextualized a lot of the time. Other, you know,
right.
the little interviews and the little scenarios, those are fun because they are contextualized at least. But so much of the rest of it is just decontextualized.
Right, and repetition.
And
Yeah.
I'm looking at this going, okay, fine. You know, but it's just not the same as human to human.
Yeah.
And how we keep hold of that human quality. I mean, the UN, UNESCO has its AI guidelines that really, guidelines for teachers that really emphasize the human element in all of this. And it could be more easily read than it is, but you know, more readable than it is, but it's still, I mean, their whole thing is, let's keep it human. Let's keep it human.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, people are thinking
So
about it.
So it sounds like you would not agree with Louis Van On that we can still have teachers, but they're just basically going to be daycare and the AI is going to do the rest.
I think
Did you
you
hear about
could
that?
have a scenario where that would be true, but that's, why would people pay for that? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean it was it was a part of this interview. I mean, he said a lot of interesting things that kind of gave away what his concept of language learning is.
Mhm.
And it confirmed a lot of my inherent suspicions about like the efficacy and use of Duolingo and so on. But I mean,
Yeah.
this like human element that you've been emphasizing, I think this is uh, one of the things that is oftentimes getting lost in the discussions about um, what AI can do or can't do,
Mhm.
because people who have an interest in pushing this technology and increasing its adoption and increasing the number of subscribers that are willing to pay money to use it, uh, there's always these kind of, I would call them like pseudo intellectual debates where they talk about like, well, you know, sure, it can't really have empathy or emotions, but you know, how good is it? Like on a scale of like, rock to human, like how close are we? And they kind of look at it as this like, well, eventually it's going to have, empathy as well, or it's going to have something that is indistinguishable from empathy. And I don't know. That's one of these things where it's like I don't think I feel like you're emphasizing the wrong thing here, right? Like the human being in the room uh has a value that is apart from whether or not like they say the right things or they specifically emote in a way that somebody gets. It's not if they're not it's not just like providing a service. They're a human being that's talking to you.
Mm.
And interaction is, with people is that people respond different ways. They have different it's not we're not going to have a world one day where like everyone just talks like AI and just constantly glazes each other. I mean, that would be pretty boring.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, you're really right. And that
yeah.
the people who are creating these, aside from not being language learners or
Mhm.
language teachers, you wonder how far along the spectrum a lot of them are too, in terms of their own human empathy. And
Mm.
we've seen certainly some high profile examples of
Mm.
singularly non-human empathy from some of the humans who've been most prominent in this, in this field. Now, one of the funny things was, one of the things that I've seen over the years is, you get a new technology advancement, and then you have the different things that they develop for language teachers. So, when we were using the first microcomputers, it was all drill and practice, drill and practice, drill and practice. And then it got a little better. It got to where it was adding a little personalization, adding
Mm.
explanations, talking to you about, so that you could get more than just the right or wrong. Then we moved into the web, and Dave's ESL Cafe, bless his heart, it was check for right and X for wrong. No personalization, no error correction, no real context. And I went, okay, we're back.
Mm.
And, so every
Mm.
time we take this technological step forward, we also lose what did we learn about language learning and language teaching in this process? And if you think just the interaction that the pharmacist was having with the client was a great use of AI,
Mhm.
immediate, focused, essential need. But humans are more than immediate focus essential needs, right?
Mhm.
We like to chat. We like to just, sit around, hang out with people. And that's not the same
Mhm.
as what you would do with your, very transactional
Mm.
interaction with the AI.
Yeah. So with that positive note, I want to ask you the last question about your future plans. Any exciting plans for the summer or any projects this year that you want to share with us?
Well, I was going to go to Malaysia and Taiwan with a friend, but then I went hiking last Thursday and fractured my ankle.
Oh, I'm
So I
sorry.
am
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am at home for a while in my boot. But once my foot heals, I expect to continue to go to conferences in places that I feel like going to. As being retired, I go places where I feel like going,
Yeah.
and I do the interviews that I feel like doing and the reviews that I want to do. And so I expect that to continue, and I'm still very curious about AI and language education, watching where it's going to go as we move forward with it, and trying to reduce our ecological damage from the large data centers.
Mhm.
As the other piece.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that your foot will heal soon and you'll get to go to more places. But thank you so much for spending time with us
Yeah.
today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This has been fun and really nice to chat with both of you.
Yes. Chat like humans.
Yes.
So maybe asking Nik, actually, do you have any tips to share in terms of prompt engineering or any explanation regarding the hallucinations? Why is it doing that? What kind of caution we need to use when using
Ooh.
AI there?
Well, I mean, what causes hallucinations, or what they are, is there's been like a lot of research that's been, you know, made to try and figure this problem out, because it's essentially intractable. Like, these models do it regardless. And there's a lot of tips and tricks that people have to like write prompts in a way that kind of hedges against this problem a little bit. But the only real solution is kind of knowing what the answer should look like.
Yeah.
Right? There's no substitute for knowing what you're talking about. And if you are, trusting the model farther than you can throw it, you're likely to run into problems. I mean, in terms of prompt engineering, I mean, like, gosh, there's thousands of resources out there about like how to do it. And a lot of times it's kind of like sort of like post hoc explanations for why these things work. I think an important thing to take away is just sort of like, what is a prompt and how does it work, right? Because a language model is doing next token prediction, right? Regardless if it has, 500 parameters or 10 trillion, it's still just doing next token prediction. And this is the same task that like statistical language models back in, gosh, the 70s were doing, right? It's just based on two previous words, what's the word that follows, or n previous words. And with language models, they've been able to get the context window to where you can do this for an almost arbitrary number n tokens ahead of an almost arbitrary number of tokens in the past. I mean, these numbers are fixed, but for most practical purposes, when the context window is like a million tokens on either side, it's not, it could be infinite as far as we care. But just knowing that that is what it's doing, right? So when you give it a prompt, it's not some special hack for the model. You're basically saying that, okay, here are the first n tokens, and I want you to predict the next token. So a lot of times you parameterize it with like something extra that you're going to add in there. So like the prompt is fixed, and then you put something on the end. And knowing that that's what's gonna happen, it helps you kind of like get a little bit more of a sense of like, why is it going to do a certain thing and not something else? Because what ends up happening is there's a massive pile of these computations that essentially constrain the space of words or tokens that can be output. And the better a job you do at constraining it with the language you put into the prompts, the more consistent the output is. And there's also little tweaks like the temperature setting, which allows the model to predict more than one response and then choose the highest scoring one at the end of the process. So that's something people tweak. So like if you set it to 0, it just gives you the maximum likelihood response. And then if you set it to 1, it allows the likelihood of the next tokens to change a little bit. But it really does help if you think about it that way, that like I'm constraining the space of things that could be said as opposed to just like letting it go. And it's like you're going to get hallucinations, and you just need to be able to catch them. But the problem, I think it's intractable. Because it's just the nature of a statistical language model. Like you gave it a certain number of tokens, a massive probability computation is happening, and then the output is another string of tokens, and that's it's a distribution. You don't really know. You're sampling from it, and you're going to get an answer, and hopefully it's consistent, hopefully it's truthful, but yeah, this
Yeah.
is unsolved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's why if you give it the same prompt more than once, it'll come up
Mhm.
with different answers. I
Mm.
mean,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's not even consistent within itself in what it'll say to
Yeah.
you.
So I like your advice that we need to know what we look for and we need to know the
Mhm.
answer as well. And that's what I have been using AI for. Even when I ask it to summarize something, I have to edit it and I know the words that I'm looking for, right? When we read a research paper, words have very specific meaning. So you actually need to know what you're looking for and what the answer is. Privacy, I remember when I saw you at TESOL and you asked that question, and maybe Nik can explain as well that with our platform or Eduling AI, because we are a service user from these companies, then they are not allowed to use our learner data. So maybe that is something that we can make it clear. But Nik, do you want to comment on that kind of technicality? And
I think it's exactly what Deborah said a minute ago. Like privacy policies have never been more important than right now. It's something that I think even like teachers or anyone using these tools, whether you're using it like just casually or actually for work, understanding what the actual terms of service are with the service provider are is kind of important. I mean, usually we're used to just like clicking accept on the um, the software contract and then like moving on, right? But the like decision of like whether they use the inputs that you give or the outputs it produces for you to train the model is entirely in the fine print. So, for instance, Gemini's privacy policy, if you are paying for the API key, their policy, at least right now, today, I mean, these things change. This is the thing, is like a privacy policy from a tech company is, it's kind of like an IOU written on a piece of toilet paper. They can change it tomorrow, right? But right now, it says that if you pay for the subscription, or not the subscription, you pay for the API key, the access, they agree not to train on your outputs. So that's good. I mean, if you have to actually put something in there that's not uh sensitive, I mean, like still like be careful. Don't put your social security number in there and things like that. But um if you use the free version, right, that's the other thing to be aware of. Like if you just go to like just Gemini.com and then just type in something, that's like the public use. And there is no protection on that whatsoever. They will use everything that you put in to train their models. Like, so if you're using the free version of any of these products, privacy is a myth. You don't have any, right? You have to be very careful about like which version you're using. Like if in the other thing is like OpenAI, for example, like a lot of people do use ChatGPT. It is the most popular one, although like Anthropic is kind of picking up speed, and at least in like coding agents and stuff like that. But OpenAI's privacy policy is I don't know. It reads like a LinkedIn post. It's not clear. It's not carefully written clearly. Like it doesn't read like a lawyer wrote it. And I mean, maybe they're trying to make it more understandable. But like when I read that, I don't get the sense that I have any real understanding of what happens to the inputs that I put in there. So anything sensitive, anything personal, like documents that you don't want shared widely, definitely don't put them into ChatGPT. Um, it's there's even like I think 404 Media reported this, that because ChatGPT has this share feature where if you type something in or you make a prompt that you think works for something and you want to share that with somebody else, there's like a link where you can give somebody you can share a link to let somebody see it. Google was indexing those, so the information that you were putting in there could be searched on Google and somebody might find it, and they just find like your random link because they weren't private. Yeah, it's a minefield.
yeah.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting when we talk about training the data. It's like it's taking it a step away. Instead of it becomes part of their data set. It's there for them to use. Your data is there. And yeah, I mean, the model will train on it, but it'll also pull from it. I mean, that's my understanding, at least, that it's not just you're giving it a little practice over there, the way that we let our students practice. No, it's your data is part of their data now. And it's no longer yours.
Mm.
So that's, I mean, that to me is you got to be willing to do that, to just say,
Mm.
fine, take it, run with
Yeah.
it.